Every time a new game is released, I am constantly reminded that modern game reviews suck. I won't deny, game reviews are an important part of gaming. They help influence your decision on where to spend your hard-earned money, but often we value them higher than others when it comes to deciding if we should play a game. The issue with more modern reviews is that they have an array of problems attached to them. So today, I wanted to dissect and discuss why modern game reviews suck. There are two major problems that modern game reviews run into, and the most obvious has gotten worse and worse over the years. Review scores. The problem with review scores is that they're honestly complete bullshit. The traditional 1 to 10 scale is what most people use, and it's so incredibly dumb alongside the 1 to 5 stars scale or the 1 out of 5 scale or 5 out of 5, whatever it is, and the expanded 1 to 100 that Metacritic uses. The first glaring fault that this has is that these traditional review scales are trying to use a number, which is objective, to summarize an opinion, which is subjective. This is then made worse by the fact that they add good or excellent to go with that number. Many of the number-based ratings we are accustomed to make no sense when considering how many variables are in play. The arbitrary scores that they put at the end of these reviews feel like they are pulled out of thin air and just slapped on top of the review. And this makes any prior statement that they say about the game sound silly in comparison, in my opinion. Maybe it's just me, but how does something feel like a number? How does something feel like a 6 out of 10? What does an 8 out of 10 game look like when we are talking about someone's opinion? This goes deeper when you ask the question, what are we comparing these games to? You need to have some form of baseline for you to compare a game's positives and negatives. But are we comparing them to all games in existence? Are we comparing them to all games in the genre? Games in the last 5 to 10 years? Do we judge a game based on other releases in a single year and then it resets on January 1st? Then we look at the reviewers themselves. They all have their own likes, dislikes, and what they value higher in a game. Their own personal collection of games that they are pulling from to be able to make these comparisons. Then you have the people that only play one genre or have only played one game for the last 5 to 10 years. And then you're comparing that game that they've played as their baseline comparison to everything else. For example, I played Destiny for a multitude of years, and I'm trying to compare that to a new action RPG that's releasing. My score is going to be indicative of what I think is good in Destiny as opposed to what is good in the action RPG genre. We all value aspects of games differently. Story over graphics, gameplay over art direction. This all factors into our overall score. If a reviewer is a fan of previous games and also the wider IP, for example Warhammer 40k I'm a massive fan of, then it's also going to factor into the final score. Are all of these points important? Yes, but they are completely invalidated by boiling it down into one number for the sake of simplicity. And I mean, I get it. I would hazard a guess that most of you watching this video now see a review score and don't really bother to read into the finer details. You just look at it and go, okay, that's my informed decision. I'm guilty of it myself, but we really shouldn't be doing this, myself included. Let me ask you this though. Feel free to answer in the comments, what do you think a 6 out of 10 game looks like? And make sure, whilst you're down there, subscribe to the channel. This becomes an even further problem when you consider review scales. Review scales from many of the major sites are set guidelines that they follow, and this applies to all of the various reviewers that publish for those sites. It's a collection of many opinions that helps form that scale. In my opinion, it doesn't work. What you end up seeing quite a lot of is IGN 7 out of 10 slapped onto everything, or what you saw more recently with PC Gamer, where Space Marine was scoring lower than Gollum. That is just one example of, in my opinion, like why review scores don't make any sense, and if they fit into a guideline and it ranks lower than something else, it doesn't take any of the other aspects of the game into consideration. The only time a review scale actually works is on an individual basis. This allows the watcher or the reader to follow a person's opinions over multiple reviews to get a better sense of what they like and what they dislike, and compare it to their own values and what they think is a good game to make an informed decision. It's taken me 6 to 12 months or so to get a scale that I am happy with, and that goes must play, I can recommend, mixed, I can't recommend, and don't play. There are other channels out there that have their own spins on this. ACG has buy, rent, wait for sale. We have SkillUp, who has strongly recommend or not recommended. There's also a movie reviewer that I watch that has Awesome-tacular as his highest, all the way down to dog shit. These aren't perfect at the end of the day, but at least they offer a better alternative than just an arbitrary number for the sake of having it. Review scales and review scores might be a problem, but the second problem I want to discuss is rushed reviews. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that at least 70% of reviews are rushed out the door to meet embargoes. A lot of the media have the game for either like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Then you also have content creators that don't meet that press level that get the game maybe a week early or even a couple of days early. And speaking from my own experience, I've had review copies of games arrive a day before launch, which isn't exactly ideal when you want to make a review. Regardless of how much time a reviewer has pre-embargo, they essentially have to speed run a majority of the game in order to get the review ready. And it's crazy when you consider that games could range from 10 hours all the way up to 100 hours plus if you want to experience everything for the sake of a comprehensive review. Massive open world games, RPGs, games that have really extensive endgames that can take multiple hours to reach. And with the increase of live service games, you can't even cover the game until after launch anyway, because you need to see what the content plans from the games are. For myself, I like to sink a decent amount of time into a game to have pretty strong thoughts, to be able to kind of formulate a review. To give you an idea of what this looks like, say I receive a code for a game 5 days till the review embargo. I can play the game 8 to 10 hours a day for 3 to 4 days until I've either finished the game or explored all of the systems that I have to offer. I will then write a script based on my thoughts and make it make sense, hopefully, record the commentary, and then go through all 30 hours worth of footage to find relevant footage for what I'm talking about and edit it all down to make a final video. I'm no stranger to sitting and editing for 8 to 15 hours over the course of a day or so. It's not exactly fun, but you have to do it if you're trying to reach the embargo. The schedule can be made harder or easier depending on the size of the game, but it doesn't stop the rushing of an initial playthrough. Purely from a business standpoint, these big media companies that you see making reviews have to do this because they need to make money on their sites and through their channels as soon as possible. This is also the same from like a YouTube perspective because you want to capitalize on the views and the buzz surrounding a game. The issue with doing this is when you rush through a game and you cram it into 3 days, it doesn't give you enough time to be critical. The good and bad aspects of a game are amplified and you end up being more reactionary than level-headed, which is what you need when you're trying to have a fair review. It certainly sucks the fun away from playing a new game a lot of the time when you're trying to cram it into a short space of time. And I find that a lot of the thoughts that I have, and I seem like others have, are surface level at best because I've not had a chance to let my opinion bake a little bit more to be really critical. Maybe that is just a me thing and I can't kind of get that grasp. Other people may be able to do that, but maybe we don't go down that route. Maybe we adopt the post-launch review strategy, which many reviewers will do and many normal people will do that don't have the luxury of receiving early codes. This works, but then also there's less of a chance of people seeing your review if you're putting it up onto YouTube or any of the other platforms, which is the issue that you run into. But if you're just formulating an opinion on a game, that's completely fine. I will hold myself accountable and say that I've had to rush through games without experiencing every single aspect of the game fully, purely for the sake of getting a review out on the channel. It's hard to balance as a reviewer. It's why most of the time I will only look to review games that I'm really interested in, because why am I going to force myself into this process for the sake of reviewing a game that I'm not that jazzed about? When a game is good, it certainly helps, and it makes the review process so much easier. I think we should all treat these reviews as buyer's guides and first impressions, and for the most part, I think you should go and try and find a reviewer or even a content creator that plays a game that you like or a genre that you like and see what their thoughts are, because I think it will align better with someone that is more interested in the genre you're playing than just a standardized review from a lot of the big sites. When I think about a lot of reviews, they are a snapshot in time for a game's launch. With the nature of live service games and the constant stream of updates that we get from developers for even just single player games at times, what a game looks like in 6 months' time as opposed to launch can be very different. It means revisiting a game or replaying a game in its entirety later down the line is becoming more important than ever with how much a title can change. No Man's Sky is always brought up as a perfect example of this, and it is. But another example for me, which is more personal, is Destiny 2. The game has had its high points and its low points, and that would change the score that it had at its review. Say it got a 70 or a I can recommend at the time of launch, and it has a couple of bad updates, and now you can't recommend it. You kind of see where this goes, and that means that review scores can become undermined by a later update for the game. So with all these problems in mind, why are reviews still important? Why do I bother to make them? For me, it's a 50-50 relationship. The parts I love are informing and helping people 100%. Talking about new games always gets me excited regardless, and I've found I've gotten older and played more games, I can be a little bit more critical, but I just want to talk positively about games and hold them to a standard that at least I have set. The parts I don't love is the review process at times. Cramming 40 hours into the space of a few days is not really healthy at all for anything that you're doing, even in life. And when like an 8 to 15 hour game releases, it's an absolutely wonderful time. I did this way back with Dead Space but last year sometime. There's also so many games to review that making a tough choice on what one you're going to cover can be tough as well. Couple that with the fact I'm not really a negative person, so writing about a game's poor aspects is something that I've learned to get better at, but I've always struggled with. Reviewing games is hard for sure. I won't knock anybody for doing it, but I feel like as much as we hold games to a certain standard, I do feel we should do the same for reviewing them. The focus on scores and rankings is just a way to get people to discuss the games and drum up either outrage or elation, which is the nature of media on the internet. I just wish there was a concrete solution that we could find for these problems. But there's always going to be problems before this video, and there's always going to be problems after this video. At the end of the day, all reviews are somebody's opinion. Maybe you agree or disagree with mine. Either way, let me know your thoughts on modern game reviews in the comments below. Like the video if you've enjoyed this, and subscribe if you want to see more content. And as always, this has been Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.